On today's Locked On Texan podcast, breaking down the Colts with Ben Arthur from Fox Sports.
You are Locked On Texans, your daily Houston Texans podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome in, everybody, to a Friday episode of the Locked On Texan podcast, a part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. This episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use promo code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Last-minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. I am your Texans football analyst, John Some Sports Guy Hickman, and of course, joining me Monday through Friday is your Texans credentialed media member and Sports Illustrated's own Cody Davis. For today's episode, we dive into the YouTube comments. Bobby Slowick takes responsibility. How can he improve as a play caller and offensive coordinator? But we are breaking down the Colts with Ben Arthur from Fox Sports.
So, Ben, of course, week one of the 2023 campaign, you was down there, Indianapolis Colts versus the Jacksonville Jaguars. Ben, right off the top, what did you see out of rookie quarterback Anthony Richardson?
Yeah, I saw a lot of positives out of Anthony. I think his pocket presence is really strong. I think that there was a narrative and justified, right, that he may be a little raw. He's going to need some development. Started just 13 games at Florida, but his pocket presence really impresses me. Just being out there, you can tell he's in total command of the huddle and the operation at the line of scrimmage. He doesn't. The moment never seems too big for him, and then obviously his athleticism just jumps off the tape. I mean, with being in Shane Steichen's offense with the Colts, you got those RPOs, the read option stuff. He seems very comfortable in that, and he certainly gave the Colts a chance to beat the Jags. He was not the reason they lost. I mean, he's and I think this is going to be the case this year for Indy. Like he's going to have to probably be Superman. And there are going to be a lot of highs and lows with that, just because, as I said, like he doesn't have that much experience just in terms of snaps at a high level, being given his limited sample size at Florida. But, with the run game situation without Jonathan Taylor, the run game is not looking good right now. Zach Moss may return for them this week, but they had 25 yards on 16 carries. Like you can't win playing like that, and the receiving room has kind of been underwhelming outside of Michael Pittman Jr. So I think, considering all the circumstances, just with the talent around him and the perception of him not maybe being quote unquote ready to go, like he definitely looks the part, and you can certainly see the potential and the upside with him.
You mentioned that for the Colts to win games this year, Anthony Richardson has to be Superman. What if he's not Superman for the Indianapolis Colts? What's another player, or what other player for that Colt team should the Houston Texans fans kind of be worried about or keep their eye on heading into Sunday's matchup?
Well, I think Michael Pittman Jr. is probably the first guy off the top of my head. And with the Texans situation, right, with probably Jalen Petrie and Jimmy Ward probably not going to play. Well, when you think about kind of blowing the top off a defense, Michael Pittman Jr. could be that guy. And Alec Pierce actually has been a solid deep threat. He was as a rookie last season. He's kind of gotten off to a slow start, but I think you have to look at those guys. But I think apart from Anthony Richardson, the strength of this team is really the defensive front. Like that they have for them, like being more of a rebuilding team, their defensive line, their linebackers, it's a very strong group. Like that defensive line gave them a chance against a really explosive Jaguars offense. I mean, they have arguably the best interior defensive line tandem between DeForest Buckner and Grover Stewart. Zaire Franklin had a breakout season last year. He had 18 tackles last week. They're bringing Shaquille Leonard back in the mold, and it's probably going to take some time for him to really get his feet under him. But you look at those guys up front. Oh, forgot to mention Kwity Paye, former first-round pick, who's a real solid pass rusher. You look at the pressure numbers; he's really good in that department. So that defensive front is going to give them a chance, and the Texans O-line has a lot of issues, as you guys know. So if they can't protect CJ, it's going to be a really long day. So I think, honestly, probably the defensive front is probably the thing the Texans should be most worried about, in my opinion.
Ben, you mentioned his name, and I do want to ask you about him because at one time he was quickly becoming one of the best linebackers in the game, and that's Shaquille Leonard. I know, he probably looked rusty, but what did you see out of Shaquille? Because this is a guy, going back to last season, he only played 3 games, and you saw, despite them having a pretty good defensive front, you saw the impact that the Indianapolis Colts had once he went out.
Yeah, no, Shaq, I mean, he's, like I said, he's really trying to work his way back. I think, especially with the way he plays, right? Like he's attacking the ball aggressively. He's the maniac, that his nickname for a reason, just the way he can get after running backs and in coverage. I mean, he's a turnover takeaway specialist. I think if you look at the numbers since he entered the league, he's probably top of the league in terms of off-ball linebackers with turnovers. And so I think for him, and he's talked about this at length, how it's just a matter of getting his feet back under him and kind of trusting his body and being willing to kind of put his body on the line and whatnot. He was, I think, later in training camp, as we, in preseason, getting closer to the season, he really started to find that more in practices. But then he also had a concussion setback. Mm-hmm. And so I think for him, it's just a matter of stringing a lot of days together. And I think in time we could see that. I mean, he probably can't maybe be the same player that he was, pre all the back stuff, but I still think he could be a star level player. And I think it's just that's probably just the evolution he has to make just to still be effective, if that makes sense. And the one thing the Colts have done, I mean, they have a really good, off-ball linebacker room. As I said, Zaire Franklin, with Shaquille Leonard out, he really took a step last year playing at a Pro Bowl level. I think he was a Pro Bowl alternate. They lost Bobby Okereke in free agency, but they have another guy coming up, EJ Speed, who's probably their number 3 guy. And so they have some guys there that, as Shaquille Leonard is trying to work his way back to being a star level talent and force in the middle of the defense, they can kind of buy themselves some time with that. So, and I think just the fact that he has 1 game under his belt, I'm sure there were a lot of nerves, right? Just in terms of just kind of getting out there, like getting through a game, not being injured or what have you. And I think in week 2 against the Texans, we'll kind of see him take another step.
The AFC South right now is kind of interesting. You got the veteran coach up in Tennessee. You got second-year coach Doug Peterson, who we know has won a Super Bowl with the Philadelphia Eagles. You got 2 rookie quarterbacks here in the division now. You got 2 rookie head coaches here in the division now. And this is a division that I don't think by no means is one of the strongest in the NFL, but it's definitely one of the more interesting divisions in the NFL. You got a guy in Sunshine who a lot of people are ready to call a top 5 quarterback, top 6 quarterback in the league. So when you look at the AFC South landscape, what are you looking forward to the most, Ben, as you cover this division?
Yeah, I think, first of all, it's just the rookie quarterbacks. with having Anthony Richardson, number 4 overall pick for the Colts, and Stroud being, the number 2 pick. I mean, whenever you have a highly drafted QB who's kind of expected to be the savior of a franchise, I think that draws a lot of intrigue and interest, especially from my vantage point as, a member of the media, as a journalist. And we know what the Colts have kind of been through historically, like since Andrew Luck, since his stunning retirement. Like, it's just been, one quarterback after the other. I think with Anthony Richardson, it marked their 7th consecutive, like, different starting, like, QB1, like for week 1. So, they obviously hope that he can be the guy. And then in Houston, with the whole fallout with Deshaun Watson and the eventual trade, like with CJ, for that franchise, hopefully being the guy for them. I think right off the bat, those are like the 2 most interesting storylines for me. And obviously Will Levis in Tennessee, he's kind of buried in the depth chart right now, but seeing kind of how the Titans QB situation develops, and with having all these young quarterbacks, you can't help but think, like, okay, like, if all these guys pan out, or some of them, like, what does that mean for the division in the next 2-3 years? I think that's a really fascinating conversation. But then beyond that, I think just how good are the Jaguars? Like, how good can they actually be? We saw them take a step at the end of last year. We saw them get a playoff win in crazy fashion. They were a touchdown away from being in the AFC Championship game. And then looking at what that offense did, against the Colts on the road, a place they haven't won in like 6 years, like, they're supposed to, the expectation is they're supposed to continue this ascent, right? And I want to see if they actually live up to that billing. Like, can they actually maybe start knocking on the door of the Chiefs and the Bengals and the AFC's upper echelon? I think that's, apart from the rookie QBs and how that develops and transpires moving forward, I'd say like the Jags, like, can they actually live up to the hype, or are they going to end up being like maybe the same old Jags that we've kind of seen, early last season and obviously the few years before that, before Doug Peterson and before Trevor Lawrence started coming into his own.
Ben, last question before I let you go. When you take a look at Sunday's matchup, I think the one thing that has everybody kind of conflicted on who they think is going to win is because both of these franchises mirror each other right now. 2 highly respected rookie quarterbacks, rookie head coaches, and it seemed like going into this game, both teams will lean upon heavily on their defense. So, Ben, really quick, give us a score prediction, and what do you think? Which team do you believe is going to have an opportunity to really get that edge over the other?
Yeah, I'm terrible with score predictions. If I had to say something, I would say maybe Colts 24, Texans 21. I don't know. I'm just giving Indy the advantage because, I mean, I think about something the Jags were really able to do against the Colts was take away the deep ball, like with the 2 high safeties and keeping everything underneath. But the Texans, without having their top 2 safeties, there could be some issues, I think, in terms of giving up explosive plays. And apart from running the ball, like, Anthony Richardson's best attribute is the deep ball. And, getting Michael Pittman Jr. and Alec Pierce the ball, I think there could be some opportunities. I know Steven Nelson and Derek Stingley Jr. are really solid corners, but I think just with the safety uncertainty, there could be some opportunity. And then I just don't trust the Texans O-line, and going up against a proven defensive front, Kwity Paye, Grover Stewart, DeForest Buckner, Zaire Franklin, Shaquille Leonard, again, kind of being in game 2 of his return. I think it's going to be really tough, especially if Texans can't establish the run again with Dameon Pierce. And we know they have a bunch of starters on IR and have had injury issues. I think it's going to be tough for them. And not to say the Colts don't have their issues too, but kind of looking at the two teams in this particular matchup, I would give the slight advantage to the Colts. So I'd say 24-21 Indy.
I'll make a lot of Texas fans mad with that one.
Ben Arthur, AFC South reporter for Fox Sports. Ben, really quick, where can our listeners and viewers follow you at on all your social media platforms?
Yeah, first of all, thank you guys for having me. You can find my work on foxsports.com and on the Fox Sports app. If you go on the personalities section and find me, you could find me and all my work on the AFC South teams. And then on X, you just at Ben Y Arthur, just one word. And same thing on Instagram as well.
Sounds good. Appreciate it, Ben.
No problem. Thank you guys for having me.
Forget planning months in advance, guys. Game Time has deals on tickets right up to the day of the event. Get exclusive flash deals on tickets for football, basketball, baseball, concerts, comedy, theater, and much more. Game Time guarantee means you'll always get the best price. If you find tickets in the same section and row for less, Game Time will credit you 110% of the difference. Get images of your seat before you buy so you know exactly what to expect when you arrive. Buy tickets in a matter of seconds. 2 taps and you're set. Tickets are sent directly to your phone so you never have to dig through your email. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use promo code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms and conditions apply. Again, create an account, redeem promo code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Welcome back in, Locked On Texan listeners and viewers. So, great conversation there. My man Ben Arthur from Fox Sports. Now we are talking Texans and a couple of things that we have to talk about. Number one, the injury bug. But number two, Bobby Slowick took responsibility. What did he take responsibility for? Well, Dameon Pierce only had 11 carries. Didn't get Tank Dell as active as a lot of people would have wanted him to see. Cody, what's going on with Bobby Slowick? How can he take that responsibility for some of the things that Houston didn't do right, take the accountability, and make that action step to get better? I know one of the things he talked about was practicing faster. Houston on several occasions against the Baltimore Ravens had to burn a timeout because the offense was not ready. What's going on with Bobby Slowick, and how can he improve in week 2?
Well, that was the main thing Bobby Slowick talked about, and we had an opportunity to talk to him on Thursday. And look, the one thing that I like about this coaching staff as of right now, one, first and foremost, they tell it how it is, but two, and most importantly, they are not afraid to make a mistake. And when we got the news that Noah Brown was going to go on IR, Coach D'Amico Ryans went up there, and talked about, what Noah Brown has going on. But he said straight up, looking back at the film, they should have used Tank Dell a lot more. And that was very telling to me because John, yourself, and everybody, other reporters, fans, viewers, everybody was asking the same thing. Why in the world didn't the Houston Texans use Tank Dell a lot more? And we are definitely going to see more of Tank Dell in Sunday's game. And not only Tank Dell, possibly that goes into Xavier Richardson as well. However, Thursday, coordinator day, we had an opportunity to talk to Bobby Slowick, and he took the same approach as D'Amico Ryans, taking responsibilities of the Houston Texans' offensive woes.
We got what we wanted, and we just really across the board through the whole game. I know D'Amico mentioned it, CJ mentioned it, a lot of the offensive guys had mentioned it. We just had a lot of self-inflicted wounds, and that starts with me. From the operation to getting in and out of the huddle to just being clear and on our assignments and just executing our stuff. And it was a hard environment. It was tough. Baltimore's not an easy place to play, and they do some really, really tough stuff. There's a lot going on. There's a lot of chaos. And we'll be better at that this next week. Like I said, just efficiency and speed. To me, that'd be the number one thing. How fast we can get the play call in, how clear we can be with it, how on it we can make sure the rest of the coaching staff is as far as personnel substitutions and what's going on in that regard. It's just a trickle-down effect, right? So from there, as we've been doing in practice this week, it's noticeable.
Going back to Monday's show, the recap of the Ravens, and even Tuesday as well, John, you know, all throughout this whole entire week, I kept describing week one as a promising and encouraging loss. And you look at all the mishaps that happened. Most of those mishaps that took place was like kind of small, but at the same time, it cost the Houston Texans the game. You go and you take a look at CJ Stroud completed about 65% of his passes, threw for 242 yards. You saw how efficient the Houston Texans were on third down. They converted, what was it, like 7 of 18. You saw guys like Robert Woods and Nico Collins step up in the passing game. Like, you saw so much promise and potential. However, some of the things that they definitely need to fix in terms of play calling, speeding up the tempo, basically all the small stuff, you know, and of course giving Dameon Pierce, you know, the ball more. And you said it perfectly when you went back and watched the all 22, how you noticed there was moments where, you know, due to his vision, he did not go through the correct hole, the correct gap that was already open. It's like all the small minor detail. Pause. There, you happy? All of the small minor details. I look at the Houston Texans and I think to myself, they are definitely going to have an opportunity to put on a better performance for this upcoming game against the Indianapolis Colts. And once again, I love the fact how everything that we have been talking about, D'Amico Ryans, Bobby Slow, and even Matt Burke talked about it as well in terms of how he's able to utilize what they did against Lamar Jackson and kind of carry that over and try to replicate that against Anthony Richardson to a certain extent. I love how those guys are really telling it like how it is, and when they're at fault, they're really taking on the responsibilities.
Yeah, and so Houston, you mentioned Xavier Hutchinson. He only played 7 snaps on Sunday versus the Ravens. With Noah Brown going to IR, Houston will expect more of Tank Dell. But here's something, guys. Xavier Hutchinson, Tank Dell, Nico Collins, Robert Woods, Noah Brown. Those were the 5 receivers that were featured on Sunday, this past Sunday. Now, with Noah Brown, who took 52 snaps, playing in nearly 68% of the offensive snaps, with him going out, absolutely we're going to see more of Tank Dell. But there's no doubt about it. Houston should see more of Xavier Hutchinson. Now, some of you guys are probably like, can't wait to see John Mechie. Can't wait to see John Mechie. Here's the thing about John Mechie, right? Cody has been saying this all year, basically. He's going to need that time, rightfully so. I don't think John Mechie, who was at practice this week, did get a little active. I don't think he's not acclimated to the league good enough to change anything with play calling, to change anything how this team can prepare for a defense on Sundays. So I look at Xavier Hutchinson, who right now is more physically ready, I think maybe more mentally ready, and has played in more snaps. And so he kind of has more of a grasp of what this team wants to do on the field. But going back to Bobby Slowick, yeah, he just has to listen, don't panic. I think at times against the Baltimore Ravens, there was panic setting in. You're going up against a team that mirrors you. Rookie head coach, rookie quarterback, banged up on one side of the ball, maybe a little healthy on the other side, but still banged up a little bit. You know what I mean? And so I'm looking at this situation for Bobby Slowick, and I'm saying a couple of things. Number one, you kept Andrew Beck over Dalton King. I thought that was a mistake, but for Andrew Beck, utilize him, right? Motion, out the backfield, as a blocker. And when he does get in as a blocker at that fullback position, make sure that he's creating contact. And for Dameon Pierce and Devin Singletary, the vision has to be better out on the field. Once this offense has an opportunity to get the ball rolling in the run game, then again, I've said it before, that will open up what Bobby Slowick can do offensively as a play caller. But overall, he took responsibility for it. I do remember listening to the Bobby Slowick press conference. He said that now that we're down a receiver, we're going to need one to step up. Tank will have his opportunities every week. This is the week for him to have those opportunities. And not necessarily from a standpoint of we got you on the field. He's the fastest receiver on the team. He's probably the most dangerous X factor receiver on the team. So what I'm getting at is for Bobby Slowick, you didn't do a good job of scheming for him last week. Do it this week, right? And that's, overall, just go out there and put your best players in positions for them to make the best plays and get a dub on Sunday. And it's important to get that 7-3 connection. It was 7-13, but to get that 7-3 connection going in front of the fans at home for the Texas home opener.
Yes, sir.
Sunday versus the Indianapolis Colts.
Yes, sir.
Y'all not hype enough for me. And do some of the things that we've seen from you during practice and preseason, right? And I think for Houston, you do that, you execute, you'll come out on top with a win. Do you ever find that just as you're falling asleep, trying to fall asleep, your brain suddenly won't stop talking, your thoughts start racing right before bed, and at other inopportune moments? It turns out one way to make those racing thoughts go away is to talk them through. Therapy gives you a place to do that so you can get them out there, get out those negative cycles and find some mental and emotional peace. If you're thinking of starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online, designed to be convenient, flexible, and suitable to your schedule. Just fill out a brief questionnaire to get matched with a licensed therapist and switch therapists at any time for no additional charge. Get a break from your thoughts with BetterHelp. Visit BetterHelp.com/lockedon today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/lockedon. Welcome back in, Locked On Texan listeners and viewers. Before we close out today's show, we are looking at the YouTube comments. But before we do that, Cody, injuries playing a huge part of the Houston Texans. I don't want to say success, but the process to be able to execute. And then to be able to be successful.
Success in a win. I think if the Texans were healthy, especially on the offensive line,
right,
they might have came away with the victory in week 1. Who knows?
Or they may have been in a position to be able to establish their offense consistently.
That's true.
Against the Ravens. One of the things with Houston picking up those 7 first downs of the day, remember, guys, 4 of those 7 came from the first scoring drive for Houston when CJ and company was clicking on all cylinders. So throughout the rest of the game, they didn't do a very good job of getting those first downs. However, Laremy Tunsil back on practice on Thursday. Jalen Petrie still out. Jimmy Ward still out. We know that Noah Brown is on IR. Cody, when you look at the injuries right now, which injury are you most concerned about? That position group or how that play into the Houston Texans being able to, again, be successful, or the execution part? And which injury are you not necessarily that concerned about?
I'm going to start with the easy one. That concern about, and of course, that's Noah Brown. We saw what he didn't do against the Baltimore Ravens on Sunday, and a lot of people are expecting the wide receiving core, the production of this passing game, to take a step forward, given the fact that you're going to open up the door for more opportunities for Tank Dell, Xavier Hutchinson, and possibly John Mechie, but I'm not anticipating him to play. Nobody's telling me that. It's just my gut feeling. I think it's still going to be a while before we see him suit up on Sunday, but hopefully if he does go out there, he can make some plays. But I think the Texans wide receiving core, especially when you consider what Robert Woods and especially what Nico Collins was able to do, better quarterback play from CJ Stroud, that's the one I'm least worried about. However, the main one I'm worried about, the main two I'm worried about, is the Texans going into this game Sunday without the services of Jimmy Ward and without Jalen Petrie. Now, quick update on Jalen Petrie. He's been around the team. We had an opportunity to chop it up with him off record in the locker room. He's in good spirits, doing really good. I'm expecting him to be back when the Texans go into their week 3 preparations, when they get ready to go up against the Jacksonville Jaguars. However, you guys heard Ben Arthur from Fox Sports say one of the best things about Anthony Richardson, he loves to attack downfield, and knowing that you're going to go into this game without not just one but two of your starting safeties, captains, and everything else in between. I think if you make a list of top 5 defensive players, both Jimmy Ward and Jalen Petrie will be on that list. It's kind of heartbreaking, and knowing that you're going up against a quarterback who like to attack downfield. Look, no disrespect to Eric Murray and MJ Stewart, they did a pretty good job when they stepped in Sunday, and I'm expecting them to do the same. However, I will feel better about the Texans. I will feel better about the possibility of the Texans winning this game if both of those guys, or at least one of those guys, was taking the field.
Yeah. Now let's dive over to the YouTube comments. At 22VAH, who exactly were the Texans attempting to feature on offense? Robert Woods, Pierce, Nico? Good question, and I'm going to respond to that by saying no one. There's nobody to feature right now. This is an offense that, Cody, I think you put it the best way, and it's going to continue to be the best way. You pick your poison each week and figure out who is a hot man, and you roll with that person, and everybody else play your role to help contribute. This isn't an offense that has Tyreek Hill, Justin Jefferson, not even T. Higgins, who could possibly be in Houston soon. We don't know. I'm just speculating. You know,
still got that first. Still got that first from Cleveland. I'm just saying.
I'm not trading the first, but
for T. Higgins, you know what? We're not about to start.
In the offseason, I'm looking at T. Higgins, but right now Houston doesn't have a player to feature, and the process to be able to execute better, guys. When you look at Damian Pierce, yeah, he's a name that will come up, but again, no Titus Howard, no Juice Scruggs. You had Josh Jones in playing right left guard, and then you had to put Michael Data in at right tackle. There was a lot of going on with the shifting of the offensive line, so there wasn't a featured player. It was just all hands on deck, all right? And I think that's how Houston is going to be until they find a player. It may be Tank Dell, simply because this offense, wide receiver group, doesn't have a player that stands out above the rest. Until they're able to find a consistently great player for this offense, it's going to be all hands on deck, guys. I do agree. This is from Jalen Johnson, 0339. I do agree with you guys. Tank Dell needs to be featured in the offense more. There's no reason for Noah Brown to get more snaps than him. I understand they probably wanted Brown for his blocking, but Tank is just better at making this offense more explosive. Let Wood and Nico handle the blocking. You need Tank for his speed and explosiveness. Can I say something really quick? And I'm going to pass it to you, Cody. Yeah, you want your receivers to be able to block. But if all I'm counting on you to do when you're on the field as a receiver is block, I've already lost the match. I think we've overhyped that a lot, right? Like everybody, you want somebody to be able to, play their role and do it well. But this is still 2023. This ain't the old days where you had Emmitt Smith or those Jamal what's my man, Jamal Lewis or the Bus, and you wanted to make sure that the wide receiver who was badly being used in the game can block. It's not your grandpa football. If my wide receiver can't get open and make plays, I kind of don't want you on the field. So a lot of people are using that maybe for the blocking, and I get it, but Robert Woods is also an excellent blocker. That's something that we highlighted when he came to the team. Nico Collins does a very good job of blocking as well downfield. Tank Dell getting this opportunity now, I think, is going to allow Houston to see what he can do in real time in a real game moving forward.
I agree with everything that you said, but I disagree only because this is the Bobby Slowick's offense, which is a version of the West Coast offense, the greatest hits. And we already know that this is a team that wants to establish the run and run the ball. And not only that, like I said, I think that was on Tuesday's show, if I'm correct. I wonder how much of the Texans going out there on the field with a depleted offensive line, played into the reason why Noah Brown got that many snaps, because you needed as much help as possible with your run blocking. That's the most logical way that I could put this. However, Noah Brown definitely will not be on the field Sunday. John, do you think the Texans, I'm not going to say give up on establishing a run, but you think the Texans might trust CJ just a little bit more and won't put too much in the rushing attack?
Listen,
Now you got Tank Dale. No disrespect to Tank. He ain't gonna block nobody.
I think it was on the crossover episode, but I've said it. If the run game isn't giving you jack squat, then go ahead and air it out.
There you go.
Right now, if the run game is giving you life and giving, and if it's given, it's given. If it's doing what it's supposed to be doing, then yeah, you stick with it. And then again, you got to give Dameon Pierce more than 11 carries, right? Mm-hmm. He's a guy that's going to wear down a defense, not home run a defense all the time. Mm-hmm. So you got to give him more opportunities. But if this is a game where it's just non-existent again, then yeah, I'm doing a couple of things. First and foremost, I'm putting CJ in a position where in early downs, if we're going to get that ball out, 3 quick step drop. Get the ball out. Boom, let's go. Right? And the play action, if the run is not there, I'm not necessarily utilizing the play action, but I'm making sure, because of the offensive line woes, I'm making sure I got a running back in the backfield. So whenever CJ needs to drop back to throw the ball, there's some extra protection, and the running backs got to be better. Last comment before we go, talking about the running backs, David Williams, 9-1-2. The Texans running game was subpar. Now, to look right back at that running game, how long until, if this team is going to continue to be competitive, and if they're not getting the juice that they need from their running game, how long until they look outside of this roster to look to make an improvement?
I say after the bye week. But I think the bye week falls middle of the season, and that would give them enough time to hopefully at that point play with a somewhat healthy offensive line, because around that part you'll probably have Tytus Howard for 3, possibly 4 games at that point. I think that might be the most logical answer. I don't see them doing anything with the run game until they get as close as possible to getting health and talent on that offensive line.
All right, you guys, make sure that you continue to check us out Monday through Friday and occasionally on Saturdays. The Locked On Texans podcast. Subscribe, like, and comment. Give me a follow on Twitter at John_12.
And as always, I'm your host, Cody M. Davis. Please remember to follow me on the artist formerly known as Twitter at Cody Davis _24. Once again, that's Cody COTYDAVIS _24. Until next time, ladies and gentlemen, peace.